I'm gonna mute a little.
Yeah. In fact, I'm gonna ask everyone to mute so we can get a clearer transmission.
But you're still breaking up, Mike.
Breaking up is hard to do,
Not bad, but you can hear
All
compared to
right.
the rest of us. You something going on with your thing.
Well, I don't
I
know.
hear Jennifer clear. I hear Les clear. Herbert clear.
How about that?
Yeah,
All
well,
right.
so far,
Okay.
yeah, you
Okay.
sound better there,
Yeah,
but
we are now.
one
Yeah, we
talk,
are
one
live.
talk.
We are live. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday evening at the round table. I am Michael Nita, the host, and with me I have Sister Jennifer from out of Germany, Jonathan. Where you at, John? You're in Jamaica or Miami? I'm not sure. You're a man move about. Last I know is in Toronto. Herb is in Washington, D.C. And this is the panel. This is the panel for this Sunday evening. And we're going to be looking at, not looking, just talking about a topic which a very painful topic. We're talking about sex trafficking, young Jamaican women. And I might say boys across borders at home and distant land. We expect a guest, some specialists in this regard, and we want to go down that road. The guests are not here as yet, and I'm hopeful, based on what Herb said to me, that they will join us. Until then, I just want to shift to certain things now. What a week it was, eh? Trump, Trump looked like he's about to just turn over the pale and all of the secret and what have you. What do you make of Trump first week? Because a lot of people get jumpy. Right now in Boston, they are conducting raids, rounding up immigrants, you know. So I think that's going to be a future of life for the next 4 years. But that's just my opinion. I would like to hear from the others what they think about the first week in Trump plan, the return of Trump.
Well, yeah, the return of Trump, for those who had some illusion that this man had changed, I believe it's the first sign of the tidal wave, and there is nothing different about what he's doing compared to what he said he would do. In fact, it's worse. For example, he never talked about annexing last country. He never talk about renaming the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America. He never talk about taking Greenland before in the elections. So things that he never, some of the things he has not talked about, he has actually executed. Among the things he has executed that I believe are of particular interest, the first people he has terminated from the federal government are the people responsible in all the main industries, the main areas of the federal government responsible for tracking the money, corruption. He has terminated, I think, 6 or 8 of them. I forget the word that they use, like inspector general, or that's the job that those people do. So I consider that to be a very clear signal For those who thought that Trump was going to be walking on the straight and narrow pathway to lead the country forward without corruption, he has fired the people who monitor and manage corruption. The other important decision, I think, among the many decisions, is that he has put a halt to all foreign investment, foreign direct investment, whether it's social, military. The only ones he has not touched is the aid to Israel
And Egypt.
And of course, those of us who know anything about this, we know that the numbers, the money involved is day and night money compared between Egypt and Israel defense. The third important thing to me, this is Jonathan speaking, is the announcement he made only this morning or last night. It just came over the news that since Gaza is so demolished already, why not export the people, 1.5 million Palestinians, to nearby countries, Jordan and Egypt. Export them like how you export cattle. So that statement alone, for those who were uncertain about whether Trump would do worse, could do worse than Biden, is a green light for ethnic cleansing. Ethnic right-wing, extreme right-wing in the Israeli government, the right-wing fascists in the Israeli government announced long ago that their war in Gaza, their war in the West Bank, in Lebanon, in Syria, and soon to come Iran, is a war to clean out Palestinians from the territories nearby in order to allow for the welcoming and plantation of new settlers who come there. As you know, that's one of the biggest problems in Israel, where the government of Israel is taking over Palestinian lands to give it to settlers who come there to settle in Palestine. They have different rights from the Palestinian people, not just different, but they subjugate them. And the last decision he has made, which is of importance to me, is don't be an Arab, don't be a Muslim living in America. If you are a Muslim living in America, you are in the front line to be rounded up. As you know, they have launched the first wave of roundup in Michigan, in Chicago, areas where there are significant numbers of Muslims living. And what you call them, these cities where you can, the term they use is cities where they, like, I forget the term, not discovery cities, some other term they use. I'm sorry. But the point is, that's it. He's going to be going step by step, of course. If you're a criminal, you're really on the front line. If you're a criminal Muslim, you're in deep shit. And if you're going down the line, If you're a criminal, whether you're a Muslim, Jamaican, come from Mexico, from you're a criminal, you're in trouble. If you have criminal record, I should say, not that if you are a criminal. So we can expect this to be the program over the next 4 years. Resistance. Well, the only resistance I've seen so far, this is a time any politician who knows how the political system run, know that he has a honeymoon in the first 100 days. Honeymoon usually dry up in 100 days and your poll numbers start to go down and so on. So anything that Trump want to lick, now is the time to lick. When the movement is weakest, when his popularity is highest, and everybody jumping around and be uncertain. So the other important thing about the decisions is that the man is a showman. Everything for Trump is, how does it look on TV? How do I look on TV? Is this something good? Do I get coverage for doing this? His decision over TikTok is a model. TikTok, him say I'm not going to terminate TikTok right now, immediately, because TikTok show things that his grassroots support and him and so on. Elon Musk and him embracing for now, and anything that show him in good light is going to get some attention from Trump. If you hug him up, if you kiss up his ass, that's what you're going, that's a plus for Trump.
All right, Sean, hold right there. There are some strong argument you put forth, brother. And I'm
See,
not sure.
You're breaking up now, you know, Mikey.
I am breaking up. Can you hear me now?
Go ahead. Maybe you need to talk into the mic.
I am saying that those are some very strong words they use to describe Trump first week and the implications. But could this be like what Trump is projecting? Could it be a one where he's adopting a new approach to governing? Could that be what we're looking at? Because of the fear just now, we lose sight of the change necessary within government. Because government across the land, most of the government, especially Africa and Caribbean, we have some corrupt leaders. Corrupt. And no doubt America, has this whole share of corrupt politician. Could this be what we're looking at?
Mikey, I think, can I say something, Mikey?
Yeah.
I think,
Mikey, are you seeing the people in the waiting room? She's backstage.
Okay. Yes, that's her now.
Okay, Dr. Pierre should be there shortly.
Okay.
Can we get started?
Okay. Just a minute. Last, can you hold on for this and we'll pick it up after?
Yes. No problem.
Earlier, I think it's only fitting, and right for you to introduce this panel, Tell us what she's about. I did make mention of the topic earlier that we'll be looking at the issue sexual trafficking in Jamaica. And I think this is Sister Rahana, that's all.
Yes.
Yes, it's Rahana.
Mikey,
Sometimes what
let me explain that Rahana, she's an expert on the sex trafficking, human trafficking. She works primarily in the New York City area, Queens, um, and Dr. Pierre should be is the one that did the research in Jamaica. All right, so I
okay.
wanted Rahana to kind of introduce herself, and Rana is also a member of the ICS Crime and Security Committee that works on human trafficking along with Dr. Pierre. So we want to make sure that we don't get her wrapped up with Jamaica primarily because she does cover more than Jamaica. Covers the Caribbean in New York. Um, and her background, she is Trinidadian by birth, I believe, and
Yes, I am Trinidadian.
yeah, yeah. Well, and Ron and I sit on the same board in Trinidad that covers Trinidad, and the head of that board happens to be a Jamaican who does the violence against women, LGBTQ, and to lesser degree the sex trafficking. Another attorney in Trinidad covers the human trafficking, and he's also a member of my crime and security committee. And we do presentations at various points throughout the year. Yeah. So, Rana, without further ado, I'll let you go ahead, talk a little bit about your background, and then talk about what the human and sex trafficking
And
aspects are.
where you come from in Trinidad? I have to hear that.
I am from the city, Port of Spain, close to Port of Spain, like 15 minutes from Port of Spain. It's an area called Sawa,
Yeah,
and
man, I know there.
I was born, raised, and educated in Trinidad and Tobago. So I am what you call a brain drain. And I came into New York and I started working on Wall Street in the tech industry. And fast forward, how did I get involved with human trafficking? I wanted to get involved with something back, and I guess I did not know exactly what, but I always challenge myself to get involved with something that few people are not involved with. So I was invited at the UN, and I heard somebody, the founder of an organization who was trafficked, speak about human trafficking, and she told her story. And I wasn't aware of much about human trafficking like most people. And that happened probably like 6 years ago, right before COVID. And the same year, I reached out to organization and I got involved with human trafficking. And I worked with the victims, survivors, to reintegrate them back into society with a 2-year leadership program. So that's a little bit about me.
Somehow we losing some of your words, Rahana. Your mic okay?
I think so.
Okay, all right. We lost a little bit there. So, what are some of the examples?
I There was a lot of background noise in the there was a lot.
Can you mute your mic last? Can you mute your mic last on Herb so she can?
Yeah.
Yeah. Continue, my sister.
Could you all hear me clearly?
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry. I
We're hearing you. Go ahead.
Okay, do you want me to repeat everything or?
No, I'm saying we heard you, Rihanna. I'm the one who asked where in Trinidad you came from. My mother was Trinidad, and I'm very connected there. That's the reason for asking. But
Okay.
we heard you, and what I think Herb was saying is just continue in terms of the work and the examples that you are familiar with sex trafficking in the in the New York area, etc. I mean, So go ahead.
Okay. So some of the things that we involved with the survivors is reintegrate them back into society. So we teach them, for example, a culinary art program, and which is like twice a year, and we give them a tool that they can go back into society and get a job. Also, we teach them the basic lifestyle like banking, budgeting. We have a home that they stay in, and they are treated like I work with them, so we try to make them as not normal, but as normal as possible. So when they get back into the real world, they'll have at least a fair idea how it is. And we do give them jobs so they can work and earn. I have been in rooms with witnesses who were trafficked, and one of them was from Trinidad and Tobago. Her mom was Trinidadian, and she was American Trinidadian, and she got caught up with the wrong group of people, and she got trafficked. And it's funny that she got trafficked, she got out, and then she went back in. And she comes from a very normal lifestyle. Like there was no, her mother has a great job in New York, and I couldn't understand why she would go back in. That was one of the weirdest thing ever because, she comes from such a good family. But anyway, right now she's out, she's back with her family. And I've in the past few years, I've met a lot of victims who was trafficked. And so I'm also a part of an organization that I helped founded, and with gender-based violence. And one of the things that I focus on is human trafficking. And what we do is we go into the small businesses and we bring awareness to trafficking. Because as you know, there's labor trafficking and there's child trafficking. So we try to educate them a lot about the different types of trafficking, the small businesses. So if they see something, they have an idea what they can do. And we would tell them to contact the law enforcement, maybe the police, or we give them the number that they can call. Sometimes we work with a lot of I work with the law enforcement in New York, and also sometimes with the DA's office. We do a lot of work together. I would ask the DA's office to send somebody from the Human Trafficking Bureau to come and speak to the small businesses. So that's one of the ways that I focus with prevention and awareness to the community. And I would always tell them to get involved and to read a lot more in human trafficking, because human trafficking, and I'm speaking about New York, it's not really talked about. You would hear about the other causes, but you wouldn't really hear much about human trafficking. I always say if you want to make somebody like a community leader uncomfortable, you ask them about human trafficking. And when you talk about human trafficking, especially with community leaders, that's when they would just say, "Wow, I know it's such a big issue," but that's all they would say, and they would just like stop the conversation. So if you talk about other causes, they would have a little more to say. But I feel like, for me personally, I feel we need to do so much more in with human trafficking. It's where I was traveling recently to this year I traveled to Atlanta, and I think I told Mr. Nelson this. And I was in the bathroom, and when I walked into the bathroom, I saw a lot of awareness about human trafficking. Like if you see something, call this particular number. And in the airport, as you walked. I was in Florida for the holidays, and it was all over the airport about human trafficking. So I'm so glad that the airports now have things, the phone number for people to call, like if they are being trafficked, or if they could call the number, or in some way or means. So I'm glad at the airport, because a lot of trafficking happens inside airports, which a lot of us are aware of. Also, a lot of hotels that my organization that I was a part of has collaborated with one of the top hotels, which was Marriott, and we worked with them to see how we could bring awareness and prevention with hotels. And when you open the doors, they would have the phone number, or before you open the door, you would see the phone number to call if you're being trafficked. So those are the things that I have. I don't know if anybody have any questions.
Yeah, I have a basic question, if you don't mind. I'm not assuming that I am familiar with trafficking, and you use the term repeatedly, as if. Can you give an example or give some numbers as to what exactly is trafficking? How would it go from the source to where the person, is it predominantly women? Is it both men and women, or boys and girls? I mean, can you say a little bit more about the ABCs of trafficking? I mean, I've heard the term. I've never met anybody that I know of who is trafficked. So I just think for an everyday person on a program like this, if you said a little more about the basics, it would probably help. It certainly would enlighten me a little more. What is trafficking really?
So basically, trafficking is when someone, and it involves boys, girls, male, female, children, could be trafficked. For example, child marriage. You are married at a certain age, below probably 16, and your families, and this is still happening in certain parts of the world, where your family would sell you to get married to sometimes an older person, and you have no rights to say no. So that also is called child marriage. And I think it's exploitation of a human being in labor, prostitution, child marriage, labor. Sometimes we bring people into countries and we take advantage of them. They have no freedom, absolutely no freedom. And they work for sometimes no money. They probably might be fed. That's labor trafficking. Drugs trafficking, well, I think everybody knows what that is. Prostitution, which is one of the things that most people know, which is sex trafficking. So you are brought in sometimes, like I could tell this story. Sometimes people are brought in for a particular job in specific countries, and when they get there, as soon as they reach in the airport, they are taken, and then they would never have any more freedom again. They are drugged, then they would be, have to go to specific places, and they would be sex trafficked, which is like for sex. And then most of the times they would be, as I said, they would be drugged, and they would never see daylight again, because they would be sometimes, and then this is real, as real I can be, they will be chained to their bed, and most times it's a metal bed, because I remember, and sometimes when they come into a safe house, as they say, they would say they don't want a metal bed, they would want like a regular bed, which is like a wooden bed. And these are little things that I could tell you that, trafficking is real. It's happening in every country in the world, in every community. I have heard stories. I've met people in Trinidad and Tobago who was trafficked, and it happens in hotels, it happens in airport, it happens in the community that I'm living in right now. I can't tell you a percentage. I can't give you a number when it comes to percentage in New York, but I know that New York, especially Queens, New York, we have two airports, and trafficking happens the most in Queens, New York, than anywhere else. I think, yeah.
Let me see
I
if
hope
I
that
can
answered the
help
question.
out a little bit. When we talk about trafficking, um, we're talking about types of human trafficking: forced labor. Victims are forced to work in industries such as agriculture, construction, manufacturing, and even the restaurants where you go to some Chinese restaurants and other restaurants, and you see a team of people this week and you don't see them the next week. It's a different team. They move them around the country. I used to go to certain clubs, and like in New York, I remember the Russian woman would be in this club, and you talk to them, and by the following week, it's a different set of Russian women. And when you ask what happened to the other woman, they move them to the Midwest, or they move them to another set of uh, bars and clubs that they own around the country. Um, so keep in mind the areas where they work: agriculture, construction, or manufacturing, and the restaurant business. Two, domestic servitude. Victims are forced to work in
I think
private homes. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and I think the hospitality industry, like you said, the restaurants, that would fall under restaurants.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Domestic servitude, very common. Victims are forced to work in private homes, such as domestic workers or nannies. You see a lot of this happening in a lot of the, unfortunately, the Asian ASIA and communities, where they bring the workers over. They take their passports from them and they don't allow them to go out freely, to leave the home, and they take care of the kids, you could say 24/7, right? We've seen a lot of complaints from that. Um, the One of the issues, big issues that we first saw, when I say we, I work with the person who ran the program down in Houston, Texas. Welcome, Dr. Pierre. Here's a man who will kill you with statistics and facts. But the person I work with was in charge of Homeland Security Office in Houston, and we saw a lot of the diplomatic corps and the international businesses where the wives would bring in the domestic help, and these women would have their passports removed, and they would be worked tirelessly, 24/7. And when they did escape from the house, they would come to one of our recruiting stations or for the military, asking for help or asking if they could join the service to get back overseas. Um, Another form of human trafficking that involves recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, um, or receipt of people, especially women and children, where you have your higher numbers, John, um, for the purpose of commercial sexual exploitation. Prostitution. Victims are forced into prostitution, often in brothels on the streets or online platforms. Online is very, very popular. Some hotels you check into, they'll tell you what's available online. Um, Online exploitation. Victims are exploited through online platforms such as social media, dating apps, or pornographic websites. And then, of course, you have the child sex tourism, which Doc is going to get into all of these later. Victims are exploited by tourists who travel to engage in commercial sex acts with minors. And we saw a lot of cases in Jamaica last 2 years where Americans were actually prosecuted. And instead of slapping their wrists and sending them home, they were actually given 10 or more years in jail in Jamaica. And that's because the rumor had it that Jamaicans were easy. And a lot of the gentlemen who came down to Jamaica on vacation found that it was easy pickings for them to find somebody to satisfy their sexual urges. So I would just say to you, in other parts of the Caribbean, which Doc will let you know, there's more sex tourism, especially with kids, that's ongoing. You want to say anything else, Rahana, or you want Doc to go ahead and get in there?
Before Doc come on,
Before that, come on. I'm listening.
I wanted to ask, when you use the term, it's usually in the airport, exactly what you mean? Is it that the person is like Kingston Airport and then they come to New York, and how is that easy? Airport is a public place. I'm trying to understand what when you use it, when you say that it's mostly in the airport, it go on. I'm naive on this, I must tell you, but I just think it's obviously you can explain a little bit more, because to me the airport is the worst place because everybody, thousands of people walking around. It's not secret.
So 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 the person who sometimes we apply for jobs in other parts of the world, and we probably live on the other side of the world, and you apply for the job and you come into the country, and when you, and this is a true story, I just can't give too much information because I'm not supposed to be talking about other people's story, but this is what happened to a lot of people, especially in, I could talk about JFK and probably LaGuardia, and I'm sure it happens in other airports, big airports in the US. And what they'll do is they'll apply for a job. They're young, they apply for a job, they come into, for example, let's say JFK. They don't know who they're meeting. Everything is fabricated. So on the social media, maybe via email, the world of technology. So everything is fabricated. You're all excited, you're young, you want to come get a new job, you want to be in, like, for example, America. You're from, let's say, certain countries in Asia, and you want to come to America. So you come, you apply for the job, you get to the airport. We could fabricate and say we're going to meet this person, and when you get to the airport, you have somebody with your name, and you're all excited. You get into the vehicle, and then you act as they say, and then you're sent into that world of trafficking. And this happens as we speak. So that's a little bit how and if you look at a certain movies, they would show you how trafficking happens, and it happens most of the time from an airport, especially in the hospitality world, when you're applying for jobs and you come into probably to work at a specific hotel, and then you are taken from the, and then you never have your freedom again. Does that explain it?
A little more, yes. Thank you.
Yes, hi. I'm told that you are the expert in this regards.
Okay.
I would like you to tell me sex trafficking happening in the Caribbean and Jamaica. What is happening here?
Could we have Doc introduce himself, his background and stuff first?
Okay then.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good, Mr. Nelson, for inviting me. I see there are persons on the line. Rahana, and everyone. So thank you very much. So my name is Justin Pierre. I have I I'm from a company by the name of Dunn Pierre Barnett and Company Canada Limited. We have a company in Toronto. We collect data on the Black population basically. So we have one of the largest database of Black people worldwide. We do a lot of data. We collect data on the voting population. We collect data. We specialize in what is called the geography of human being. Meaning when I say the geography, the how the movement of people, how people move and why they move. So we have been collecting that type of data for a very long time. So in our database, we have a database called Black Data and Information Portal. So a lot of the international agencies reach out to us for data on their population. For example, you may want to know how many Jamaicans are in Canada, how much they make, what kind of income they have, what's the household income, how much money they send, remittance, all of that type of data we collect and package it and sell it to our organization. And so we have been in the business of we specialize what is called something called labor market needs assessment. So we are one of the official suppliers to the World Bank for conducting labor market needs assessment. Meaning, whenever the World Bank it gives a country funding, let's say for example Guyana or St. Lucia or Uganda, the Seychelles, any country, companies like us will come in to provide that research, that labor market needs assessment. And for example, last year we just finished a labor market needs assessment in Guyana. The government had given Guyana, the World Bank. So we came down there. We also came in St. Lucia. So what makes us a little different is that we have the data. I mean, like data. So in 2015, the Turks and Caicos government, the British government, had hired us to look at the whole issue of migration within the Turks and Caicos, issues with the Haitian migrants. And so we completed this study. We also looked at then another company by the name of PAHO, the World Health Organization, WHO, had hired us to conduct a study from about 25,000 people on the 28 countries in the Caribbean to look at the migration pattern, migration trends. And we saw some very, very interesting incident there. And what really, then also there's an organization in the Caribbean by the name of CARICOM. So CARICOM got some sponsored funding from the EU that contracted us to conduct what is called a human trafficking survey in the entire Caribbean, from French Guiana.
Nail on the head right there.
From French Guiana to as far as Belize and Mexico. So we did a thorough examination, and in that study we found out some very interesting things, because we sort of brought light to the whole issue of human trafficking. Because many persons, when we started the study, we got a lot of pushback from people, pushback from the governments, in the sense that we are putting a negative light on the country. We're saying that there are human trafficking in our country. There are no human, and it went on and on and on. And we found out that, for example, in the Caribbean, has one of the largest human brothels in the world is situated in the Caribbean. We also found out that in the Caribbean, there are about 86 brothels within the Caribbean. So sex tourism, is very popular in the region that no one talks about. So what we ended up doing, we presented the data to CARICOM. I must say that the government of Jamaica provided a lot of assistance to us. The government of Trinidad, most of the governments provided a lot of information. So what we ended up doing was to collect data from through Latin America and the Caribbean. So we collect about 198 million data points of arrests, investigations in relation for crime. And what we found out, for example, that in the Caribbean, it's very difficult. There's a lot of challenges with the whole issue of human trafficking because of the vastness of the Caribbean. So we have about 700 islands in the Caribbean. We have about 1 million square miles. The issue with the Caribbean is that there is no central government that governs the Caribbean region. Human trafficking is very hard to monitor because, for example, there are over 7,000 islands. There are about 300 islands in Venezuela, 315 islands in Guyana. We also found out that sex and violence against women is seen as a form of entertainment. Okay, and the challenges in the Caribbean, we have very weak human trafficking legislation. There's no funding there, but what we also found out that human trafficking is almost like a perfect crime in the region because no one really because of the low apprehension rate. The apprehension rate is about 3.7%. So what makes it a very good business to get into because no one really would arrest you in a big way. So what we ended up doing, also we found out that within our investigation, we found that the human trafficking, migrant smuggling, the gun trafficking, they all come like a package. And within the Caribbean, there are, for example, in addition to human trafficking, there are about 13 different types of crime that go on that accompanies human trafficking. So we have, for example, gun trafficking is very big in the Caribbean. You have what is called firearmed trafficking. You have obviously human trafficking. You have pornography, which is very big in the Caribbean. What we also have in the Caribbean is child pornography. We have the whole issue of kidnapping, the issue of extortion, the whole issue of money laundering, corruption. You have murder for hire. You have smuggling of migrants. We also have the contraband for petrol. You have what is called drugs for guns, drugs for rice, drugs for fish. We also, we also have, for example, there's a place called Rocky Point out of Jamaica where Haitians, criminals and Jamaican criminals kind of work together to evade crime. So we did a very extensive investigation, and we believe that the whole human trafficking in the Caribbean region is really too big for one government to solve. So as a result of our investigation, we had reached out to the U.S. State Department. We had a meeting with the U.S. State Department on many occasions. We also had a meeting with the Canadian government. The Canadian government really provided assistance to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And when that project was finished, we were hired to conduct a human trafficking study in Venezuela, because in Venezuela is really the root of human trafficking in terms of their victims. And in the study, we were able to look at the about 342 routes, that the human trafficking routes and migrant smuggling routes within the Caribbean region. And there was a company, for example, who donated 2,700 cell phones. So with the cell phones, we gave it to the Venezuelan migrants, and we can see now the routes, from space, all the different routes, and we're able to plot the routes and kind of use the information for data. So I'll sort of stop here because there's a lot, and maybe if you have any type of questions, I could go on and on about it, but I'll stop here to provide some sort of clarity and information.
What year was that study that you did on the Caribbean?
It was 2019, 2020. 2019, the CARICOM Human Trafficking Study. Let me just 1 second. CARICOM Human Trafficking Consultancy. If you
is that available online, or is it something we can
yes,
get?
it's available online. I think in the post in the chat, I think I sent if you look in the chat, you will see some of the documentation of the study. So we did that study there. We have all the documents. What we are trying to do now is to really one of the universities has reached out to us to really make a textbook to kind of explain to people about the profile. So what we have done, I'm a member of an organization called the Global Association of Human Trafficking Scholars. So what we do is that we try to develop a profile. So my job as a researcher is to understand the perpetrators. Who are the perpetrators? The psyche of a perpetrator. Why would make someone go into human trafficking? And we did a comprehensive study on that. What we did from the data we got from a lot of the organizations from Mexico, from Guatemala, from Venezuela, from El Salvador, all of that, we found that what we done is that we had looked at about 119 million data sets. And what we looked at, we found out that who really commits crime, what type of people commit sexual offense against women, or what type of crime, who commits in the Caribbean. You have to understand that the Caribbean we are 8% of the world's population. I think 670 million people, but we are responsible for 34% of all crime in the world occur within the Latin American region. So what we found out that in the whole issue of the most number of incidents and arrests in the region has to do with the whole issue of drug-related offenses. From the 98 million sets, but 63 million investigations or arrests is directly related to drug offenses. So drug offenses is a big part of all the arrests.
Dr. Pierre.
Yes.
You said that in the beginning of your study, I mean, some Caribbean leaders had some kind of apprehension about their image or the image of their country.
Yes.
in your conduct of the study.
Yes.
That was 2019, right?
Yes, 2020.
And you also mentioned that the laws and the structures to fight human trafficking, while you were doing that study, most of those laws and structures were not in place.
No, they weren't.
As the attitude of these governments changed, and has there been any improvement in the laws and the structures that try to combat human trafficking in the region?
This is a very good question. Yeah. From our data, we conducted there's a guy by the name of Dr. Adrian Haynes. Haynes, one of he was a scholar from St. Vincent. He conducted this study with us. Most of the laws have not changed. They still are the same way. Some persons in the region, human trafficking isn't really like an offense. For example, they just deport you. So no, most of the laws are basically the same. I must say that there are some countries that are making progress. For example, the country of Jamaica, they're making some progress in terms of putting some of the laws in. Government Trinidad and Tobago is doing some laws in. But also what we see, Antigua also is pretty good. And even though Antigua has a very robust prostitution sector, because it's a part of the economy, it's part of the whole tourism sector. But so Guyana is also putting some projects in place. So, but most of the countries is not, because of the resources. They don't have the resources. Most of the countries don't have the resources, and this is why What we're trying to do now is to take the document, the research that we have done, and put it into a textbook so that people could understand, to look at the whole the the profile of let's say a trafficker. Who is a predator? Like, who is a guy who will be responsible for being a predator? So for what we have done, for example, we took all of the sexual offenses case in the Caribbean, and we used some standardization from basic. There's something called the ISCO codes, the International Standard Classification of Occupation. So we look at all of the occupations within the world, and we divided them for the Caribbean, and we said that who are the persons that committed the most sexual offenses against women. And what we found were that the elementary workers, the carpenters, the laborer, the fishermen, all these persons who have elementary occupations, they are the ones who by far have committed the most crime against sexual crimes against women. So, for example, in Grenada, 60% of all of the high court cases has to do with sexual offenses against women. Also, Grenada also has one of the highest incidents of incest in the OECS. So, I mean, so violence against women is a normal trend in the region, human trafficking. So we found out, for example, from all our data, we found that the fishermen we found that there were 12 sectors, the people who conducted the highest percentage of crime from the 19 million data sets. The farmers, for example, farmers, fishermen, tradesmen, elementary workers. We also found that a person of trust that that people respect. I've interviewed a
Parson.
Yes.
The preacher man.
Well, I'll finish. Yeah, the person of trust. Okay, the person of trust. From that, we also found out that bus conductors, in terms of violence against women, very high. Bus drivers, taxi drivers, the nightclub owners, boat operators. We also found some of the law enforcement officers. In fact, in one of the countries, I interviewed a law enforcement officer. He was 34 years old, and he impregnated 16 women under the age of 15, girls, I may say. So I mean, it's a really, as I said, it's something that has to be done. We have to work on it, and it's very, very, very badly, because we also want to look at, in all the countries, the top 31 countries were the highest incidence of rape. All the 31 countries in the world, 50% of those countries are within the Caribbean, and Latin America. So our region, maybe because of slavery, I don't know why, but we have high incidence of violence against women. So what we did, we divided a profile, okay, of sexual offenders. So what we did is that we put the profiles into 3 sectors. We call some of these persons pedophilias, okay, guys who have specialization or in having sexual relations with underage girls under 30s. So they are pedophilias, okay? Then we have something called hemophilias. Hemophilias are somebody who specialize in sexual relations between girls between 11 and 14 years. And then you have something called the ehemophilias, guys who specialize in having sexual relationship between 15 and 19. Some men, bus conductors, they go after young girl children, school children. These guys are specialized. We don't know why they do, but they're specialized. So we were able to kind of, plot all these offenses into 3 main sectors. So what we ended up doing, we also found out who is likely to commit a crime, who is likely to commit a crime in the region. or to use the facilities of or sexual crimes. So typically, it's a white man, okay, between the ages of 50 and 70 years, 45 and 70 years old, because what we were able to do, a lot of the immigration officers, they were able to see the passport, we will see their roots, okay. That person in the country is an owner of real estate. Okay, person most likely be a middle to high income. The person in the country, the person tend to be a high spender. Normally, the person will either come from, let's say, places like Europe, Netherlands, Italy, France, Spain, okay, Canada, because they cannot do these things in their country. They have to go outside of their country to do it, generally in the Caribbean. Okay. We also found that most of these men who exploit these young girls are family oriented, but 37% of those men are married. We also found out from
What percent? 70?
37% of those men are married.
Yeah.
Okay. A man, as a guy said, to me, I interviewed a guy in Antigua, and he said that, he loved his wife, but he just loved this too. He would never get divorced, but he just, I don't know what reason, but he just, they pay for it. So these men, for example, they stay short visits to the region. No more than 3 to 4 nights. They tend to visit the Caribbean around around Wednesdays and Fridays. Okay, and Wednesday evening, later Wednesday evening, Thursday or Friday, and they normally leave the region around Sunday or Monday. So with that kind of data, we were able to plot, the trends of people, give it to the government, and they can now, track these guys. What we also found in the whole the demographic of a sexual predator in the region is that the arrangement for these women, for these young girls, are made in advance for the encounter. They're made in advance. All the arrangements were made in advance. The victims normally come into the countries by boat. They conduct their activities in private homes, Airbnb, or on yachts. That we found out. I mean, I've seen in a few of those incidents. They invited me, the guys will come into a country for 3 days or 4 days, spend maybe $20,000, $30,000. They come for 3-4 days. They're on a yacht, and on the yacht the girls come in, and you do whatever you want with them. But these guys, what they want is that they want someone who cannot resist them, someone who they could just, I guess the ability, who would not resist them. I mean, maybe that's what they get the jollies from. So some of these guys have private homes. We find mostly are businessmen, professional, or retired person. Okay, and what we found out, which is very interesting, that the violence against these sexual predators, there are, in terms of the selection of women of victims, they are ethnic specific. Certain ethnicity prefers certain women, which I find that's very, very strange. Maybe, for example, Asian, may prefer younger women, things like that. So it has been a very interesting research. So what we're doing now is to now in all that research and just put it into a textbook, so at least people could be guided by these kind of information.
Sister Jennifer, what's your reaction?
I'd like to ask a few questions.
Sure.
Are the Caribbean people also being trafficked overseas?
Yes.
I mean, are they taken from the Caribbean to other islands or other countries?
Yes. For example, there is like when we did a study, we had a study when we broke the story. Like we were interviewed with the BBC, we were interviewed by the CNN, by Inside Crime, because what we found out. So, for example, in the Caribbean, maybe about 80,000 people a year travel through the Caribbean. So there is an organization, or there is a country called Nicaragua. So in Nicaragua, there is no borders. Like, anyone can get a visa. No visa to go to Nicaragua. You just come to Nicaragua. And from when they go to Nicaragua, we found when we have to thank, for example, in the study, we had to thank the Suriname military. So the Suriname military brought us to what is called an area in Suriname and Guyana called Naikeri. So there's a Naikeri border. We're able to see the people, see the immigrants in advance, going through the route so you get from Haiti, you stop in Guyana, you will have a tour guide to take you from Guyana through Suriname into French Guyana. I've been on a boat from Haiti, 16 hours to Guyana, Haiti to Venezuela, and so it's a big business. It's a big business. So
so is the person trafficking them also traveling with them when they?
No. Most of these things that are done in advance. So, for example, we had we gave someone from Haiti, El Tonte. We gave her a cell phone, and what will be happen? We saw her route from Haiti down south, because it cannot go north again. Down south, go through the Darien part, and then into her aunt's house within maybe 6 weeks. Because because it's big money, because your daughter or your son, your daughter mainly is from Haiti. There's no hope for her. You want to get her out, you must pay a broker, a smuggling broker, to do their business for you.
Is it possible for the Caribbean to regulate prostitution in that prostitutes get a permit, and whoever doesn't have a permit you can actually identify that as someone being trafficked somewhere else? In other words, let the prostitute be her own employer.
Right. That's a very good question, because when we went to Antigua, I must, I always want to thank the government of Antigua, because the government of Antigua gave me free reign. Okay, so what we did in Antigua is that we made arrangement with the prostitution house. So we got there, we sat there, we spoke to the prostitutes, and we spoke to the Johns why they do it. And no offense, I mean they work. However, in Antigua, I find that Antigua has a very good arrangement, because what Antigua said is that they will do it anyway. The tourists come in the Caribbean for this thing, so you have to provide it for them, and the locals do not do it. So they get the foreign women to come in, the Jamaican women, the one from Venezuela, the one from Colombia to come in and perform the services. But we also have to find out now, based on our data, because we collect a lot of data, we found that over the last 6 months in Antigua, many Jamaican women, there were 6 or 7 of them, just ended up being murdered or dead with very strange circumstances. It's something that I want to talk about. Maybe it's a good idea. I wanted to do a report on it, because there were 6 or 7 Jamaican women.
So were they killed by their customers, or were they killed by their pimps?
We don't know. We reached out to the Antiguan police. The Antiguan police said that they died from natural causes. It cannot be. It's very unusual, because we have the Jamaican passport. We know when they came in, when
taking away local business. That's what happened there. Them taking away local business.
So
Jamaican women are pretty.
Yeah. It's a very, very interesting. It's a very interesting.
That's your theory, John.
And
well, I live in other countries, and I can tell you that is probably a very high reason.
yes,
I'm sure some of the people from the other islands cussing you out today, John.
What we also found out, because of the drug trafficking and the drug smuggling is very high in the region too, we also have found that we found that a lot of the traffickers are ended up like either what is called they end up being mules, okay, drug mules, or they end up being what is called dead cows. Okay, so maybe I'll just explain. So a drug mule is someone who willingly carry drugs with them.
Right.
So, I say, hey, Jane Doe, you're traveling from Jamaica to Miami. I'm putting 5 pounds of cocaine in your bag. When you get to Miami, you will see a guy with a blue hat and a blue hat around his head or whatever. So he will meet you and whatever. And so that's like a mule. So the whole issue of a dead cow. So a dead cow is that someone who travels with drugs with them, but they do not know they have drugs on them. So my daughter's going up to Canada for the first time. What I do, my uncle or a friend would buy a dress or a briefcase or suitcase for them, or maybe a nice bag, give them a cake. And in that cake or what is laden with drugs. So when the police now, when they go through immigration, the immigration search, obviously that there is drugs, they'll arrest her. She has no idea that she's shocked that she has drugs on them. Okay, and so what a lot of the law enforcement will do sometimes, they call me and say, hey, we have this situation, what do I do? I say, can I speak to the person? And sometimes when you speak to them, they will tell you, well, how this thing happened. And then the police now could then go and meet the cousin or the brother or the person who put that drugs in on the person. So it's a very, very challenge. However, we cannot. It is no one government can really take control of that. And in my what I believe is that all of the government, they should have a human trafficking maybe task force in the region to come together, because it's the cartels. There's Socio-economic cartel and other cartels and all these people. They are well equipped. I mean, in I've interviewed one person in the cartel, and they have their own cell phone towers. They're well equipped. They know the trade. They're very good at what they do, and we just have to learn from them. And every country does not. Most countries don't have the resources. Jamaica doesn't have the resources. Grenada, Trinidad doesn't have the resources, because the resources is really bigger than any one country.
But Dr. Pierre,
Dr. Pierre,
all of these countries, I believe, are members of the International Organization on Migration. What kind of assistance, or what does that organization and these countries being part of that organization bring to trying to combat this situation in the Caribbean or in the region, if they're able to? And my other question is, with the other aspects of crime in the region, it would seem from what you're saying that the human trafficking is so tied up with other aspects of crime in the region, which puts another strain, because these countries are already grappling with those aspects of crime, and they don't have the structure and resources to fight those aspects. So it only complicates the issue of human trafficking. So what's the way forward?
Well, they must have a system. Okay, we must collect data. Okay, and the challenge we have in the Caribbean, nobody really collects proper data. So we collect data based on projects. The ILO is given a project, they engage persons. When that project is finished, everything finished. They start with a new project and a new project. So there's no data. So this is the reason why we are trying now to come and provide the data. So we have a database of all these things and we are now collecting people. So far we have about 640,000 people registered on the portal. We are now trying to monetize the portal, maybe, so that, we get revenue, so that we can now conduct more of these studies. Because if we do not conduct the study, nobody will conduct it. Most of the governments, a government would not voluntarily conduct a study in their interest. They must get that funding from an external partner, with the exception of Barbados, I will say. So if the international agency doesn't have the will to conduct the study, none of the government would really conduct a study, because the only time a study is conducted is when it gets funding from an international organization. But what we are trying to do, we're trying to say, let us fund our own study. Let us find out what is their issue. And the issue in the Caribbean is a lack of data. So there are about 32 major data producers. We need to bring all of them together. And this is what we try to do in our Black Data and Information portal. And we are reaching out to people. We have investors coming in, because data now is really, it's all of a sudden is
important.
Yes. So you must, is it called data for decision making? And we are doing a project. I'm doing a project. I'm the lead consultant on a project with the OACS called Data for the Decision Making. We have to use data to make decisions, and that's why we also were hired by the government of Guyana to conduct national skills audit. Guyana is growing, is booming. However, in order for them to plan, they must have the data, the foundation, in order for them to build. And we were there down there for a whole year, from 2023 to December 2024, collecting the data, conducting the survey, and so that the government of Guyana can plan for the next 5 to 10 years.
Dr. Pierre, sex trafficking in Jamaica is nothing new. In the 60s,
what's that?
A lot of women used to go to, in the 1960s, a lot of women from Jamaica, Kingston and couple,
Yes,
used to travel to Bahamas and do the work and come back home.
You're breaking up, Mikey. Something wrong.
I'm saying
Question.
sex trafficking
yes.
is nothing new in Jamaica.
No.
Because I remember as you growing up, women used to travel to Bahamas and do the prostitute work.
Yes.
Okay. I'm amazed at the level of data you say you have. And the data points to, yes, our government are silent on this issue. Because the data you're collecting now is data about criminal activity, right?
Right. I wasn't hearing properly. So can someone just paraphrase for me, please, if it's possible?
I'm not sure. He's saying that it's an old practice in the Caribbean, but I'm not sure what the question is. What was the question? I couldn't hear. Are you saying
the question is
You're breaking up badly, Mikey.
that you have, the data that you have, do you share this with the police in the region? And
Well, I mean, as some of the law enforcement officers in the region will reach out to us because I mean now we have more sophisticated data. We use we have it's one of data from geospatial data. We have a lot of administrative data. So every month from the 26th to the 26th of the month to the 2nd of the following month, we kind of scrape their databases from most of the governments, the statistic agencies, as Statin and all the others, to get to collect the data and make sense out of their data. Because what we're seeing is that people collect data, but they are just they are data hosted. They just data administrators. They just collect the data and just have it there. But what we're trying to do now, we'll take the data and use the data for decision making, to create policies, to create directions. And this is what we're trying to do. This is what we are basically raising the funds for, so that we now can do our own study. Imagine if the portal, there was a problem of human trafficking in the Caribbean region. Instead of we're going to the IMF and the World Bank and the IOM, if we can conduct that data on behalf of the government, take that information, put it in the portal, so that everyone could, give it to CARICOM, so that everyone could learn from it. And this is where we want to go. This is where we want to. It's a new dimension. This is where what we want to do. See.
Are you seeing? Go ahead, Mikey.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Dr. Pierre, are you seeing members of the Interpol, who's now in the Caribbean? Have they been reaching out to you to see what your data is telling them about the international sex trafficking, especially of minors?
Directly, not Interpol, but I know that we have been in contact with certain persons from the U.S. State Department who have reached out to us, and other agencies, some persons from France, I think, so organizations have reached out to us, some of the police, because, as I said, the whole human trafficking in the French region is also big. And we see, for example, what we have found out. We have looked at the whole issue of the routes in the Caribbean. So there may be about 10 basic, let's say, I using this term loosely now. So there are about 10 or 11 basic drug trafficking routes in the Caribbean. So there are 10 large ones. Okay, so I was saying, for example, in Grenada, for example, around the Grenadian territory, there are like 4 major drug routes. So what is happening, that Venezuela now, and cocaine from Venezuela, cocaine from the Colombia, then Venezuela has stepped up its cocaine production. So maybe about 30%. So Venezuela is now a major cocaine producer. What has happened in Venezuela? A lot of the cartels are emboldened. They are now making production because Venezuela has to solve its foreign exchange problem. And drugs is a very lucrative way. So the cartels now producing they produce the cocaine to get up to North America, and they use that type of route. However, there's the cartel is producing this special type of marijuana called spice. Maybe you should Google it. I don't know if there's a type of strain of marijuana called spice. So spice now it takes like 10 units of herbs to about 3 units of pure marijuana. The spread, stronger, potent, cheaper, big business. However, that process is come from Venezuela to go to St. Vincent, Dominique, right up there of the Caribbean. So Grenada now is like a transshipment point. So it's a lot of pressure on the Grenadian government, a lot of pressure on the Grenadian law enforcement. So as a result, what has happened is that when drugs come in the Grenadian waters, the drugs are accompanied with guns and firearms. So what we see in Grenada now, because of that, they're having a huge a problem with firearms. So recently they have put some laws, there have been a lot of killing, etc., etc. So drugs in itself creates a lot other problems, the social problems that affect everyone. So therefore we have to really take this as a very, very serious issue.
I have a question. Are the sanctions from the US against Venezuela, is that what's causing the foreign exchange problem?
Well, drugs problem. Well, of course. I mean, they have to live, okay? And you have
but then what is more important for the American government? Is it not better to lift the sanctions and reduce the problem? Because a lot of these drugs are going into America and being sold in America. So
right.
who in America is profiting from the sale of these drugs?
Well, I mean, I'm not an expert of that, but what I can say,
Research don't extend so far.
yes. So what I can say, basically, we have to use the data in the sense that the drugs in the region, okay, because it's about 7 million people have left Venezuela over the past 10 years, and look where they are. But however, the government has to do something to survive. So the government is using many other areas. There are about 144,000 registered prostitutes in Venezuela. So Venezuela is not. So they have to get business elsewhere. They're expanding, and especially with the drugs now, the drug cartels are expanding their territories. And in May of 2022, we found that there was some what the cartels are doing now. The cartels are apprehending fishermen in the open seas, putting drugs on them, and then telling them to break the drugs down into smaller pieces. And so it is very tough on these countries, and these countries do not have the resources.
What about Cuba? Since you brought up Venezuela, is there because the same stranglehold that Venezuela faces is probably worse in Cuba?
Yes. Well. What I would say that our research was not, even though it entails the Caribbean, we did not have many interactions. The Cuban government provided support, but in terms of on the ground research, no, we did not do that. So I wouldn't have enough data on Cuba, but most of the other countries I would have data on. Because we looked at Suriname, most of the governments were very, very, very cooperative. Suriname provided data, Belize provided, all of the countries provided data. So we have the data on most of these countries. We also looked in Venezuela. We looked at the 24 territories in Venezuela that were most likely to have human trafficking. Sucre, Iraq, or most of the companies. We collect data from 200 communities.
I'm curious, Doc.
Yes.
What is causing the building boom in these Caribbean islands? We see all these high-rise buildings going up. Were you able to survey that? Is that a matter of drug trafficking, money laundering from trafficking, or what?
Okay, well, that's a very good question. Well, I would not know for sure. I mean, I don't have enough data to kind of put the point on it. But what do I know that drug trafficking in the region is, I mean, it's a big business. There is an organization that actually one of our we were in one of the countries. We were in Dominican Republic, and one of our colleagues went into a hotel, and we interviewed a guy, and the guy had a brochure. Came from Italy, had a brochure stipulating the kind of woman he wanted.
A brochure?
Brochure, yes. It's a business. It's a business. It's like $2 billion in the Dominican Republic. It's big money. Human trafficking, drugs again, because they look at Guys, people have these beliefs. So, for example, I mean, you know that there's a saying in Kenya, Ghana, Kenya, that if you kill a hermaphrodite person, or you cut off an arm, you'll be successful. If you have AIDS and you have sex with a virgin, it will be cured. I mean, like, there are a lot of taboos. I mean, it's a big business. So there is a country, I wouldn't call it its name, but there is a, what is called, you can spend like maybe around $21,000 to have sex with a virgin, and the parents will give you their girl willingly. So it's very strange. It's very strange. It's very, very, very strange.
Dr. Pierre, you mentioned port in Jamaica involved in this business. Can you tell some more? There's someone in Lynetown or Clarendon?
Okay. Beg your pardon?
You mentioned a port in Jamaica.
Yes. Yeah. What we found out from our data, a lot of we found out we got that data from being on the ground in Haiti. That a lot of there's a place called Rocky Point in Jamaica that a lot of the drugs go through. A lot of there's this kind of relationship with the Haitian cartels and the Jamaicans that flows through Rocky Point. But remember that a lot of the people who spearheads the drugs through Haiti are not necessarily Haitians, but persons from France and Australia. So it's big business. It's multi-billion-dollar business, and no Caribbean man can have 2,000 kilos or 1,000 kilos of drugs. A regular guy there's no. It has to be bigger than that, and and when speaking to cartels, speaking to guys like Damien Schoon and all these guys. I mean, these guys are. I mean, these guys it's a business. It's a business. It's like an occupation because there's a demand for it. There's a demand for in the Caribbean. There's a high demand for sex in the Caribbean because it's a form of
world. Yeah, I mean, I was struck by some of your the numbers you gave or the impact. I was very struck by your comment that 8% of the world's population is producing 34% of the crime.
Yes.
I was also struck by your the words you used was that sex trafficking is the perfect crime. And the reason why it is being tackled is when it is married to drugs. And the drugs is what they're tackling. Not the woman, not the sex trafficking so much. It's the drugs and the gun.
Right.
So your point is very clear that I just look at Jamaica, born there, grow there, travel to different islands, and I can see the picture, how easy it is that here we have sun, we have sea, we have tourists, and we have beautiful women. So, and these women are poor.
Yes.
Relatively speaking, the women when you look through, Venezuela, Cuba, it don't matter whether English speaking or Spanish speaking or French speaking, there's beautiful women in the Caribbean. It is inevitable if you can go below the radar.
Yes.
And commit and make plenty money below the radar. This is going to be a big attraction. And it's really the woman who going after the source of correcting this or stopping this is up to the woman.
The woman, well, I think it's
when I say the woman, I mean until the people who are suffering from this ailment begin to are able, along with the men, turn up to it. But your data show that this it's a money making thing.
It's money making. So, for example, we have reached out to one of the governments, our government, to get some funding to build. We build what is called a victim registry. Okay, because from the data that we collected, like when you hear the stories of the victims, the stories of the women who want to travel, who missing. When you hear the stories of the mother, of the children, of the father, when you hear these people's stories, it must change your mind. And that's why, because no one is collecting that kind of data. So we have a lot of data from Venezuela. We tell persons to tell the stories. Some of them tell the stories in Spanish. So we're now in the process of translating that, put a voice to it, put a face to it. And if I would like, for example, I wrote an article called law enforcement in the facilitation of human trafficking. Okay, I wrote this article, and when we did this study, we found out that a school guard, a gym teacher abducted 2 girls in the school compound and sold her to a trafficker.
Wow.
And that trafficker, went through the process. Took her. She came to Trinidad. She had no passport. She went to a brothel. But what we found out was the leader of that gang. Was a Trinidad and Tobago police officer. So it's a big. It's something. It's just
amazing.
How to make these things up.
Yeah.
Because it's making 10 times more money.
It's a lot. It's big business. It's big business.
Yeah.
But they think that 2 things, Doc.
Yes.
The best traffickers happen to be family members.
Yes.
Because family members have better security. They don't speak outside of the family, and they recruit for the local recruiters. In other words, they identify in the schools and the colleges those kids who want to drop out and want a faster life. And once they have identified those people get recruited, and the families are rewarded with good monies, right?
Right. I also want to tell you that I put the copy of the article in the chat. So if you look in the chat, you will see the whole issue of law enforcement and the facilitation of human trafficking. And the funny thing about that it's a big business. You would not. It is just. Listen, it is just amazing.
Well, I'm not amazed, because I think this is where, if you want to make money regardless of the law, this is the way to go. And your point about Venezuela is not lost on me, because here is a country being strangled by the US politically.
Yes.
And militarily and economically. And here at the bottom of it is the rise, as you said in your comment, that Venezuela is the root.
Yes.
And it's like a huge contradiction, because all of the people who traveling in North America to come illegally, not all, but a big percent of them are coming from Venezuela.
Yes.
So either way, Makajuku, as we say in Jamaica, either way, Makajuku, you stay there, you're going to sex. You're going to sex because that is how you're going to help support your picnic and your family. If you're not in the sex, you're going into something associated with it. You're not doing it that way, you try to leave.
I tell you, for example, in Suriname, I interviewed someone from the Dominican Republic, interviewed a girl from the Dominican Republic.
Yes.
She was into prostitution maybe at the age of 7, 8, and she's
Jesus.
29 years old.
Mm.
She has 4 children. She has never spent more than 6 months with her children. As the children stays with her mother, and she goes all around the island. That's a job, prostitution. That's a job. Her job. And she said, she make okay money. She make good money. Well, she says she make good money, but an average prostitute, 62% of all prostitutes die before the age of 32 years. It's a big business. The most violent occupation in the world is a prostitute. Most victims die. The story is very, very tough for them, and they exploit them in every country. They exploit them. There's no laws against them. In Canada, you have to have laws. Prostitution is legal here, so it's a challenge we have in the region. Yes, we have a church that is very conservative, that's against it, but when we realize that in Curacao, where we had the largest brothel in the world, it was originally built in 1947. The church built it. The church was the first person that created their brothel.
Which church was that? Catholic church or what?
Well, I wouldn't say, but maybe I'll whistle.
You can't.
I know the Catholic Church into bingo. So I mean,
yeah. So it is.
The clue is that Curacao was Dutch.
Yes.
So it's a Dutch church.
Yeah.
And it's
are condoms given out in these brothels?
Beg your pardon?
Are condoms handed out in these brothels?
Yeah. Well, what you do actually, I went there. What you do is like a cabana, it's kind of nice, So people come from the ship. You come on a vacation, and you stay. You can choose which person you want. Your condoms are available. Yes, and these women are treated. They're tested. They spend 3 months, and they leave after that. And a new set comes, and yeah, no, it's big business, because there's a demand for it.
Yeah, but the sex is the oldest profession, doctor.
Yes.
So and here it is that it's really the women it's basic primarily an oppression against women.
Yeah, it's violence against women. That's it.
Yeah. Violence is right.
It is violence against women, and again, it's the sailors come. People, we know the story about sailors.
Yes.
When they come, they want women. They interfere with your daughter, and the church didn't like that.
So, Dr. Pierre.
Yes.
In the region, we know what the problem is, but when it comes to dealing with the problems affecting the victims, like the recuperation, the rehabilitation, what are those services like in the Caribbean? We know that the governments have a problem fighting the problem, but how do they fight the problems that arise with the victims? Or are they dealing with that issue? Is it purely non-governmental organizations, international organizations? How is this being dealt with?
Well, yes, it's a mixture of both. I would almost say I would say that the government of Jamaica has been very proactive in that. The government of I know there are a couple of organizations in Trinidad have been very good, but in most cases, just NGO help because, again, the resources, the lack of resources, finding out about if a woman is kidnapped and there is a murder, which one would you attend to first? Obviously, the murder. So people choose that. That's why it's a perfect crime because maybe only one in like 20 or something. So one in every 20 persons who are missing, people go after them. People search for them. Israeli don't care, and the whole issue of organ harvesting so that's all of these big businesses. It's all come to it's all a marriage between crime. So persons in the United States they'll come for kidney transplant or organ transplant, come down to Latin America, that's it.
So, what percentage would you say, Doc, of the missing people are victims of organ transplant based on trafficking?
So far, because the data is not complete, the data is less than 10%, around 8.3. So it is, but I said more data, more research is needed. More research is needed, and that is why we have to, as concerned citizens, we have to now start to collect the data for ourselves. We cannot rely on these international agencies because they have their own agenda, and they have their own agenda. Sorry, and they may we have to know what we want for our country, and that's why we want to have the portal so that persons now would select to us and say, hey, I want to do a study on human trafficking in this, how much it will cost. We get the resources, the members contribute, and we conduct the research. We take the data, we put it so that everyone can learn from it. This is the new model.
Is it possible to regulate organ transplantation I'm not in the sense that every time an organ is being transplanted, we're supposed to know who the donor is?
Well, there's some privacy issues with that, of course. Some people, they may not want to do that, but it's very hard. It's very difficult,
Because that way you could tell if the person organ being donated is a murder victim.
Well, we don't have enough data to verify these things. So, for example, we have to make decisions based on the data we have. And because we don't have enough data, it's very hard because there's not enough studies on that. So in our region, we have to start conducting studies for our own. We must do that. We must do that because the governments are relying too much on the international agencies to give them to do the studies for them. We have to do our own study, and this is why we have to thank the government of Barbados. They do a lot of their own study. The government of Guyana, they do a lot of their own study.
But when you say that in light of where this would rank in terms of problems that the Caribbean governments want to address or need to address, this will be very low on the totem pole. So what they are going to spend for studies on this area, I mean, maybe drugs, and you can tie it into, there is some overlap, and gun trafficking, but the sex trafficking and the violence against women, while it is tracked by other agencies, I know that there are several international agencies that track this. I was working at one time in the Bahamas, and I remember reading, very powerful data on how this problem exists over there, just like in Jamaica. But in terms of what the governments will spend,
yes,
I'm not sure that they see this, because even if they have the data to make the decisions to execute some action against it, it becomes the more you explain it, it becomes a big challenge. It's not going to be a priority of the police force. It's not going to be a priority of the governments. It's really low on the totem pole.
Yeah, yeah, and this is what we want to start doing. So, for example, we have so many like starting will produce data, many of the other countries, but it's not
Right.
coordinated. There is no large data set, maybe with the exception of maybe Jamaica and the PIOJ, but most countries don't have a large data set to make enough computation. And you see that, so and this is what we want to do. We want to establish a centralized labor market information system in the region where all the labor data could be imported into one section and make decisions from it. So, but if we continue to rely on the ILO and all these agencies to help us, we can't do that. We got to do it ourselves.
So you're saying then, Doc, there is no CARICOM intelligence information gathering to impact this problem of human and sex trafficking.
I would say yes. There is the CARICOM impasse. They have I mean they have been able to collect data, but they also is limited because they also collect funds. They rely on international funds and an international donor, and that's the problem again. Lack
But
of
do they set a goal, targets? Is this a part of your mission in to help wipe out the trafficking? Do they assign goals to CARICOM countries overall?
well. Well, I bet yeah, I would say yes, and that is why we have to, despite everything, we have to thank the U.S. government, okay, that put a a bell over these countries' head that here you have to report on human trafficking every year or else A B C D, and if it was not for that, the human trafficking problem would have been worse
Mhm.
because remember the standard, international. Let me just look at the data here. The international conviction rate is 7.3
Uh-huh.
internationally. In the Caribbean, is 3.7. We don't even. It's not a.
Woefully behind.
Yeah, we're behind.
Say that again. It's international
Human
conviction
trafficking
rate
conviction rate is
7.8.
7.3%. And let me
7.8.
let me get it properly. Right, sorry. Okay, the international, the number of persons investigated. Okay, so the conviction rate is internationally 7.09. In the Caribbean, it's 2.9. Sorry, not 3. It's 2.9. We don't.
When you say the Caribbean, you mean the actual
Generally,
Caribbean or Caribbean and Latin America?
Caribbean and Latin America. Well, we're too small. The group was 2.9.
Yeah,
So listen. So it's a perfect crime. So you know that if you get into human
of
trafficking business,
course. It's a
the odds
perfect
of you getting caught is like
man
there's
now.
no way. There's no
Man
way.
now come after you. You're
And
getting caught
nobody
is
come
not the
after you.
problem.
So there's a country so here what we did. So we were in when we started the story. We wanted to we went to ground zero. So Trinidad was ground zero. So we learned that from the Turks and Caicos. So when we go to a country to conduct a study, the first place we go is in a church. So we go to the church, we go to the pastor, we tell, hey, my name is Dr. Pierre. I'm here on behalf of CARICOM conducting a study. Can I speak to your men's group, your women's group, whatever? So we speak to the group because the church has the widest cross section of anyone in the society. You have what is called rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief. You have the rich man, the poor man, everybody in the church. So we started in the church, we conducted some service in the church, and we asked the persons, hey, we conducted this human trafficking study. Do you know anyone who is in the field? Do you know anyone who was a prostitute? Do you know anyone? We found this woman who was a prostitute, and then she could change her life
To the church.
to God. She got saved. She's no longer in this business. God bless her soul. But we asked one of the other staff, but do you know anyone who is still a prostitute? She then gave us two of her friends. We interviewed this person, Some of them couldn't speak English well. We had the interpreters and said, hey, we know that you, okay? Do you know of any of your friends? Then she brought us to her friend. And then we said, hey, we were going somewhere with this. So we said, here, could you do us a favor, please? We could pay you. Give you a cell phone, we pay you. And do your business normal, over the next 90 days to the study. And what these 29 women did, we gave them a cell phone. And they went.
This is in Trinidad?
Yes, they went to do their business.
Right.
And from the cell phone now, we can track the 273 places where they did the business in a small country as Trinidad. So we were able to get a live data. So we had a green dot. We had a green dot, and the cell phone on the GPS scale was marked with a green dot, and the other patrons around was a red dot. And you can see, yeah, it's big business, man. It's a big business. So
but unfortunately, Doc, Trinidad numbers are forced up by the numbers of Venezuelan women and probably others that come into Trinidad because they have no other means of support.
Yes.
Right? So it's actually Venezuelan population that left, the 7 million that left Venezuela. That's driving up a lot of countries around them involvement in this trafficking.
Yes. So yeah, no, Venezuela is I said, Venezuela is the epicenter. So far, our data shows that they're about. Let us verify some of these data with the U.S. State Department, but we found out that there are approximately drugs and trade about 175,000 people in this business. It's big business. There's no way it's big business. Big business.
Gentlemen, we're up in the hour. We don't want shit to fall off from us. So, listen.
Yes.
Dr. Pierre, I want to thank both of you for spending your time.
We've run out of time.
What's that?
We have run out of time.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, we up on the 6 o'clock mark, Doc.
Yes.
So what Mike is doing is saying thanks.
Yes.
For your appearance, and hope to have you back another time.
Yes.
Maybe give more specific coverage.
Yes.
On Jamaica.
Well, yes, actually. Lastly, thanks to the government of Jamaica also and other areas in 2018, I think 2020, we did a study in Jamaica. We interviewed some of the dons. It was a very interesting study. Okay, it's called No Evidence. Let me see. No evidence. No evidence of.
While you're looking, we want to thank Rahana also for being a guest this evening. She has a lot of exciting court cases where she had to go testify.
Oh, thank you.
And deal with folks who were trafficked. So she is at the correction
end. I deal directly with victims who are trafficked.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Well, I give my email is there in the chat. People can reach out to me. Also, the issue with Jamaica is there also. There was a one that ran the Observer ran the story. No evidence of human trafficking. There's an issue with the U.S. State Department stating that Jamaican drug lords, Jamaican police were involved in human trafficking. So we kind of went to like many of the dons and many of the police, etc. So it was to read.
Dr. Pierre, are you willing to come back and discuss that?
Well, what is it? I didn't get that.
he wants you to come back and discuss the study
Yes,
about Jamaica and the dons and the police
yes.
and the State Department when they accuse them of being involved in drug trafficking.
Okay then. Well, thank you very much, everyone. As I said, you can reach out to me, and our website. Let me give you our website. So that's lastly our website is www.Don Pierre Barnett and Company. I'll give you a website. We also have a non-for-profit organization that receive funding from the government of Canada to kind of do some of our work. So which put us in a good place so we can collect their actual data. And this Cancaro, CANCARO. Okay, so I'll just lastly I'll give you that.
Well.
So that's it. So okay, look in the chat. In the chat, it will provide most of the information on the website. We do a lot of work. A lot of persons reach out to us. Organizations like Crime Stoppers, reach out to us, so we collect the data. It's more or less more technology now. So that's it. Anyway, I gotta go. Thank you very much. Rihanna, reach out to me. Jennifer, reach out to me. Herb, reach out to me. Les, reach out to me. Mikey, reach out
man,
to
we
me.
will.
We all in this together.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, my brothers. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, that was a wonderful discussion. So, I want to thank you all. Until next week.
Yeah, man.
Good, and I'll
Bless.
see you again next Sunday. All right.
Take care. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
You're always welcome. You're always welcome.
Thanks.
All right, Mikey, we talk. All right, Jennifer, thanks.
Yes,
Take
bro.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.